Grown Man Sessions. Welcome back. I'm your host, Timothy Rhyme, and it's about to get real. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with a dude all the way from New Zealand. His name is Richie Hardcore. He's a super positive dude, Muay Thai champion, fights for social change in the right way by just helping educate and helping other people just tap into that good energy that they have. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that I know none of you guys want to talk about, but it's something that we should and we need to. We're going to be talking about toxic masculinity, because at the end of the day, we got to turn that into healthy masculinity. It doesn't make you soft, doesn't make you weak, doesn't make you anything bad. It just makes you human, fellas. So stop beating yourself up trying to fit in that box, all right? Before we get started, hit the like and the subscribe. And yeah, just let us know what you think in the comments section. Would love to know what you guys think about what we're doing with Grown Man Sessions. We're literally trying to change the world one interview at a time. If you believe in what we're doing, feel free, or please consider becoming a patron for as little as a few dollars a month. It'll go a long way. And without further ado, let's get this thing going. Alright guys, so this is a head exploding emoji episode. This is kind of like different parts of the universe coming together. This is like Grown Man Sessions on steroids. I just need you guys to understand that when I first started this platform, I had no idea like where it was gonna go, but gradually the universe started connecting dots for me. And my guest today is joining me all the way from New Zealand. This guy was introduced to me via a friend here in Los Angeles. He found out about Grown Man Sessions and he said, dude, I got the perfect guest for you. And after I looked up his profile and I did my research, I agreed. So I would like to welcome Richie Hardcore onto Grown Man Sessions. Thank you for joining me today, bro.
Yo, Tim, what's up? Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate the humbling introduction.
Yes, man. Like I said, dude, I firmly believe that the universe is kind of just laying these opportunities or whatever you want to call them out for me, because I feel like I'm in my purpose. I'm just trying to, like how you say on your website, man, just trying to make the world better, man, through changing these narratives and changing these conversations amongst us men, because I feel like it's detrimental. Or it can be detrimental, but if we change the narrative, we can, alter that,
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And that's how change happens. I've come to believe as I've gotten older is through a lot of patient, consistent conversations to bring one another into the space of change. I'm all about that call-in culture, not that call-out culture. Like we don't know what we don't know until we make some mistakes a lot of the time.
Yep.
If we're talking about masculinity and healthy relationships and stopping men's violence or mental health or any of these things or any sort of big social issue, often we're unaware of what we're doing wrong or what, so it's on us to like to help one another, come to like
exactly.
Yeah.
So Richie, before we get started, man, I just wanted to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself, just so that they kind of get an idea of who they're talking to or who they're listening to. Richie Hardcore is a Muay Thai champion and a campaigner for social change. And you could say he was a bit of a fighter with a career that spanned more than 20 years. He was paid to punch people in the face. These days, that energy is channeled towards his big mission, which is to make the world better by supporting people to live their best lives. And I mean, that is just like the ideal like sentiment here on Grown Man Sessions, man. Is just trying to like help improve other people's situations in any way possible.
Yeah, word. Well, that's it, man. Like it's just paying it forward for me, and like that's what you're doing. And I feel stoked that like young homie like you hits me up from Los Angeles, and here we are on the same journey,
Yeah.
And, yeah. I've just taken the energy that I applied to sport, and like I was a kind of disaffected young man. I come from like a dysfunctional childhood. My dad's alcoholic, and he struggled with depression and stuff, and that runs through my family history in lots of regards. And
okay.
my mother's side of the family has a migrant story. You know, they come from Lebanon and come to New Zealand and they lose their language, but quite patriarchal in lots of ways, and all that comes down the line and lands in me somehow, right? So I've spent the last sort of 10 years trying to understand why I am the way I am, and then also understand why I'm in the way that we are. Why are we at the highest risk of homicide or committing homicide? Why do we perpetrate violence against women and girls at such horrific rates? You know, like, why is suicide such a leading cause of death for young men, you know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you know, you're out there in LA and I'm down here in New Zealand, but a lot of the causes are pretty similar. And while we have to think about like race and social class and economics, one of the big things that interlinks this conversation is our ideas around what it means to be a man. Like, what is masculinity? You know, like the social, traditional expectations that we place on boys and men. They do have their differences and their nuances and their and you know, different causatives, but there's all these similarities, right? So when you think about what's it mean to be a man, most of us off the top of our heads will be like, have some tattoos, have some chains, like be tough, boys don't cry, bros before hoes, you know, snitches get snitches, you know, snitches get stitches, right? And you know, America is like this global powerhouse of cultural production, and that filters all through the world, man. You know, I'm out here in New Zealand, and I grew up listening to like NWA and Eazy-E and, you know, West Coast hip hop, and then like East Coast New York hardcore scene, you know, like straight edge and all of that, and all that taught me stuff about how I was meant to be, and it's the same with all of us, you know, like we grow up trying to fit in and trying to search for our identities, and if our cultural drivers and then the people around us are like, yo, it's like this, we push ourselves into that box to fit in, to want to belong, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like when I was like an early teenager, I went through this whole alternative phase. I went to like an all boys sort of jock high school, like a working class high school, but we were like real fruity with like, you know, bleaching our hair and like wearing like alternative clothes, and really into that whole grunge scene, right?
Okay.
And it wasn't until like I'd been doing martial arts a couple of years, and I got in like a fist fight with some dudes at school, and everyone like just started giving me props and like, yo, what's up, man? You know, you threw down, and you know, it really changed how other people treated me. And I couldn't articulate that when I was 15 years old, but I really leaned into that. You know, I stopped being like this alternative kid. I started wearing like vests and like baggy jeans, and like I cut my hair into a fade, and I like leaned into this construct of masculinity, right? And everyone treated me differently. I went from like this alternative dude to like kind of like this tough sort of facade, I guess. But I'd still be the same sort of sensitive, complicated in my head dude, but I had this image, right? And like I wasn't a gangster or anything. I wasn't like running the streets or any shit like that. I just wanted to, I guess, in hindsight, fit in, right? I wanted to be like a quote unquote real man. And you know, it works to a degree in that I got, you know, social status, and women treated me differently. But when I reflect on all of that sort of stuff, it didn't take my inner pain away, right? Like it didn't take my inner dissonance away. It didn't take my insecurity away. It didn't immunize me against depression or anxiety or things that I would struggle with in my 30s, right?
I kind of think like, tell me if you agree or not, because I feel like I have a similar background to where, you know, I started doing bad things, I'd say like around like middle school, high school age. And yeah, dude, like the way that people treated me changed. Like I became like this cool kid that other people like, you know, wanted to be around and thought I was like, you know, cool. So I was like you said, I gave into it. But what you just said was that it didn't help you like deal with certain aspects of yourself. It didn't immunize you from different things that you were going through. In retrospect, for myself, I feel like it actually taught me to bury those things a lot deeper, and to like and completely act like they weren't there, and completely ignore it, and just kind of like draw like a really strict line around it, and say like, okay, no, that's not. I'm not touching that, because that was the thing that didn't get me any of the things that I have now.
That's exactly the same thing, man. You just put this mask on, right? And then you kind of ignore what's going on inside of yourself, or you party a lot, or you work really hard, or you chase money, or you chase women, or all of those things at the same time.
I was about to say all of them.
Right? And because that's what real men do, right? And yet what I've found over the years is that you get to a point where you just can't carry that weight anymore, and you see dudes like going through these breakdowns, or like wilding out with their mental health, or getting like, the drugs and alcohol that used to be fun becomes like a coping mechanism and really self-destructive, or their marriage breaks down, or they have kids and they don't mean to, or they're bad dads. And you can either keep on that path, or you can use those moments of pain and rock bottom as a chance for like self-reflection, you know what I mean? And like, how do I deal with this? Because if you just stay trying to push it down and ignore it, like you're talking about, Tim, it's gonna come out somewhere, right? Like it's gonna
always does.
And we see that in our sad statistics, the stuff that I started talking about, like violence, whether against our partners or against, some dude who cuts you off in traffic, or looks at you funny, or steps on your new sneakers, or violence against ourselves. We have a chronically high suicide rate in New Zealand, particularly for our young Indigenous people, our Māori people, but boys and men in particular are particularly high risk of committing suicide. And car accidents, incarceration, like 93% of people in prison in New Zealand are male, right? And like, yeah, sure, being male, like biologically, neurologically, we do have a degree of difference to females in how we act and what testosterone does to us and all of this sort of shit. But then socialization encourages us, this process of masculinity, this process of identity making around manhood. When you're taught from a real young age that never back down, if someone disrespects you, then you throw down.
You gotta let them have it.
You gotta let them have it, right? And when you're taught that from a young age, that's what being a man is, it leads to all the problems that we're talking about, and that I'm sure you've seen around you in your lifetime as you've been on the journey, So I think it's on like conversations like this to let our brothers know, man, like you're still a real man if you don't want to use violence as a problem. And in fact, it's actually braver and tougher to open up and be vulnerable about what's going on inside of yourself than to just keep fronting your whole life, right? Like,
and that's man, look, that's that message right there is like the gist of this entire platform. Is like, I hope that message gets to as many ears as possible, because I firmly believe that deep down inside of my heart and in my soul, man, that had I been taught that at a younger age, had I been exposed to that at a younger age, had I been, around that at a younger age, or, even earlier in my adulthood, like when I became a father earlier, or at different parts of my life, I think my life now would be completely different, because I've had time to examine and I've had time to look back. But I think, what you're talking about, what I think my reference point is, and please, like we kind of briefly touched on this before we started, is what we consider toxic masculinity. And I know that that's a term that a lot of people are familiar with, and I know it's a term that can rub people the wrong way. So please, kind of give us a little bit of insight on how you see how that affects us.
Yeah. Okay, bro. So I used to always use the term toxic man. And so for people who don't know, like I speak in schools, I speak to businesses, I work with different services. And I started off talking about domestic violence specifically and sexual violence and what is consent. And um, what I've come back to as I've done the work over the years is, exploring some of the key drivers. And of that is toxic masculinity, right? It's a box of socially conditioned, expected behavior and beliefs for boys and men to fit into. It's a socially constructed box, right? And so when we think about, okay, so what is toxic masculinity? Men are unemotional, men are unexpressive, men are violent, men are sexually aggressive, men pursue wealth and status, men have a disdain for homosexuality and feminine behavior. We work really hard to create this image to look like that, right? And when we're talking about toxic masculinity, and this is why I don't use the term anymore, I think a lot of people think that we're saying that it's bad to be a man or it's bad to be a boy, because most people mix up gender, which is the social role and the social construction, and sex, which is the biological thing, right? Like your sex is male, my sex is male. My gender role is masculinity. Your gender role is masculinity. And there are different masculinities, right? So this one here, this one's toxic. When you got to be tough all the time, when you when you're quick to get angry and like get in fights, and you only deal with your problems through alcohol and drugs and partying, and you're hitting up a different woman every week on like Snapchat or Tinder or whatever, and like all of that behavior, that's bad for us and it's bad for the people around us. Right. And the research from like the American Psychological Association will tell you that the more boys and men try and fit into that box of expected belief and structures and behaviors, the more psychological distress they experience. So it's not just bad for like women and kids and other people, it's bad for ourselves, right?
Right.
To essentially try and be something that most of us can't be, right? Like, which of us is going to be 6'2" and have a six-pack and have like $1 million in the bank and have like the sickest car all the time and like a different shorty in every city? Like, none of us, right? None of us can work, 24 hours a day, there's this whole like hustle culture. Like, we can't be like that. None of us are the Wolf of Wall Street and fucking Tony Soprano and like a great basketball player and like Canelo, right? Like, we can't be all of the things, right? But there's this whole culture which teaches us all the time, like, that's how you gotta be, man. And so we try, but we never reach it. It's not possible. It's toxic, right? That's what we're talking about. And I just would argue that when we're trying to talk on social media in particular about healthy masculinity as an alternative to toxic masculinity, we should be mindful about reaching people who don't have these conversations. So I talk about stereotypical masculinity, or I talk about traditional masculinity when I'm referring to toxic masculinity, right? If you think about like Latino culture, right? Machismo, all of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Very toxic, right? Like very traditional gender roles, like the man is the boss, the women are doing the housework, raising the kids is woman's work. Men should be out here in these streets with different shorties all the time, right? Like, that's a common theme. And that's the same in lots of different cultural contexts about how boys and men should be in the family and how women and girls should be in the family. But if we break those sorts of old stereotypes down, it becomes healthier. Because most boys and most men want to love and they want to be loved. We want to be in connection with people who make us feel safe and cared about. And we want to make other people feel safe and cared about. Humans are tribal, man. Like, that's why social media is tearing us apart, because we just like other people and we cancel them and like we talk mad shit about whole groups of people without knowing anything about them. It's really dehumanizing and objectifying, right? Because humans are like, we want to be loved. And I think toxic masculinity or traditional masculinity, spiritual, it actually puts these barriers between us and love, puts these barriers between us and connecting with other people. Like, you know, stereotypical bros don't give each other big 20-second hugs, heart to heart, face to face, right? We like dab it up and like shoulder butt, you know, like, yo, what up, you know, like,
Yeah.
I live in New Zealand, you live in LA, but it's the same sort of stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You know, like I traveled through South America a lot, been through Mexico like 3 or 4 times. And, you know, I understand that like land culture is the same. You know, I've been to Spain, same shit over there. I got, you know, friends in Australia, same shit over there, right? And we're just all pretending to be this artificial construct of what it means to be a real man. It's toxic for us. That's what we're talking about. When we want to offer an alternative, I think it's about going, yo, man, like I put my son to bed and I read him stories. Or a dude like flipped me off in traffic and I didn't get out of my car and give him a hiding, right? I just like sat with that anger. I just sat with that anger because being angry is nothing wrong with being angry. I get angry.
Human emotion, normal human emotion,
man. But don't get me wrong, like I want to beat up a lot of people some days, right? And like, but I don't, right? Because I understand that response is toxic response, not a healthy response. I might badly hurt someone and I might like be the man for a minute, or I might get hurt. But either way, I risk going to jail, makes my life smaller, not bigger, right?
Right.
You know, instead of, you know, I had an argument with my partner yesterday, right? Like, I think when I was younger, I might have been like, damn, you know, like, might just text up these girls that I used to go out with and see what's up, you know, like as an unhealthy, destructive coping mechanism, right? You know, I feel hurt. I feel disconnected. What's the easy fix for that? Oh, get some validation or some sexual attention from someone else. But that's toxic, right? It's not healthy. It's not going to make my relationship stronger. It's going to derail it or destroy it. But a lot of us fall into these behaviors because they're taught to us from a young age. So how do we change that? Well, that's on us to have conversations like this and not just talk about it, but be about it. You know, you're raising a daughter or a son? You got a child? Oh, wow.
Both.
So like, you know, how do you help your son know that it's all good for a man to cry, that his sister is worth as much in the world as he is? You know, that if she wants to, I don't know, play NFL or like get into MMA or something, that's cool. If he wants to like stay at home and like read books and like be an academic, that's also cool. Yeah, we don't like give props to like men who aren't sports stars, right? Like maybe rappers and musicians and business people and sports stars, but we don't really like socially valorize or turn like scientists and nerds into like
superstars,
lions, right? Yeah, superstars.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I'm mad grateful for like medicine. Or,
right?
Like, you know what I'm grateful for? I'm grateful for like poetry, and I'm grateful for like philosophy. Yeah. And I'm grateful for, and like I'm not saying it. We never talk about those things, but you don't see those people like on billboards or in advertising campaigns or. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's so true. Yeah, I think I have a lot of interests that I used to. I mean, I don't do it anymore, but I used to like try to hide it, you know, because I felt like, oh well, you know, my other guy friends are gonna think that, oh, this is kind of weird or it's lame or it's weak, you know. So like I just kept it to myself. But as I got older, I started realizing that like in all, you know, the way that I see the world, like this is the important stuff. Like this is the meat and potatoes of our existence. Like, you know, I love listening to philosophers. I love listening to like debates, just so that I could like get different perspectives and just learn from other people and you know, and just try to expand the way that I'm thinking and seeing the world. And I used to, like how you said, man, like I didn't think that it was quote unquote cool. I didn't think it was something that other people would think was cool. So I hid it. And now like I just feel like it's something that I'm more proud of because I am aware of my own you know, inhibitions, I guess, and I'm aware of what I'm projecting onto my son. And to me, that is like the most important part of my awareness of myself, is just being aware of what I'm passing down. Because I picked up, not only did I pick up negative behaviors from like the males that I was around in my life, but I also picked up negative behaviors from the females in my life, because some of the females in my life, they empowered other males in my life to be that negative, toxic person. You understand what I'm saying? So the females like that I saw, they were like okay with those negative behaviors. They were okay with that toxic masculinity. So it kind of just compounded the fact that I thought, okay, like that is normal, that is okay.
Right, because you get, yeah, I totally get it. Every time like a woman's like, yo, I want a man with like 6 figures and a big dick and like he ain't afraid of no one, right? You're like, well, I guess I better try and be like that, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it does, you know, most heterosexual, you know, cisgender dudes want to be with a woman. And if you think that the only way you can be with a woman is by like looking a certain way and acting a certain traditional way, you will do that, right? And I fully get what you're saying.
So you're getting multiple like forms of like validation of like, okay, that's what it is, that's what you need to be, like that's the goal.